Hey everybody. Woof! What a long couple of months. I have been on the road solid for the last, let's see, what is it? May, April, February, last 3 months on the road, traveling, fishing a bunch of tournaments. Came home with two fourth place checks, 1 5th place checks, 1 big bass honor, a 33rd place, which did not get me a check, a 19th place in the Bassmaster at Fork, which cut me a check, and a 14th in my first Bassmaster Open as a co-angler on Pickwick, which also got me a check. So, guys, I'm pretty excited about that. I had a great 3 months, cashed a check in almost every single event I fished, except for the one. So I want to talk today about my experience as a co-angler. I've been looking forward to this for a while and didn't really know what to expect, but thankfully I have some friends that fish professionally and kind of got to pick their brain and knew what to bring, what to do, what not to do. Talk to them about the co-angler etiquette, not casting past the center console, gas money, not sniping your pro. And luckily for me, I didn't need to cash a check at this event at all. And my reputation is worth so much more than being competitive in that regard and doing things that aren't really looked highly upon. They're frowned upon. So I was going to go in with just a great attitude, take this as a learning experience, and kind of see how the format, the time management, the layout, because y'all, I've never fished a bass boat tournament, ever. I grew up fishing walleye tournaments in the boat, so we had a Spectrum and a Lund throughout my childhood that I had a lot of experience in, but bass boat world is very different, and that's what I want to talk about. Coming from fishing national level competitive kayak tournaments for the last several years into the world of competitive bass boat fishing, specifically the Bassmaster Opens. For me, I know that my career will not include the longevity as a co-angler. I'm not wired like that. Y'all know that I like to find my own fish, I like to make my decisions, I like to fish my strengths, fish where I'm confident, and I usually live or die by that. And I feel really good about that after my tournaments because it's all my work. Being a co-angler and not having that ability, I knew would drive me nuts unless I went into it with the total attitude that I'm here just to learn and just to have the experience. And so that's what I did. So let's talk about day one. The first challenge I had, I could only bring 6 rods. Oof, that was tough for this girl who typically brings 14. Luckily for me, my boater, Joey Nania, ended up telling me kind of exactly what we were fishing. He's like, we're gonna be fishing grass, the chatterbait, fishing a couple of shell beds, just, he was general, but good enough to where I knew how to rig. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, when he said that we were fishing grass, I got excited because, first of all, I'm very confident on Pickwick, and I'm even more confident on Pickwick fishing offshore grass. So I was stoked. I knew exactly what I wanted to rig. I was going to do things a little differently than what he was doing, and that ended up being, benefiting me in a big way. So let's get back to the challenges. First challenge I had, limiting my rods, limiting my tackle, but I just grabbed a few random things from a lot of my boxes individually and threw them into one big Plano Edge box that I was able to kind of divide up and do what I wanted with it. Grabbed 6 rods. I rigged up chatterbait, big worm, a Z-Man goat Texas rigged on a 1/2 ounce. I kind of fished that like a swim jig in that deeper grass. I rigged up a weightless stick bait, fluke style bait, spinner bait, and a rod for top water, shower blow, little popper or something like that. So first spot we get to, Joey pulls up and there's a little gravel bar that comes out and he, nose his boat up to it. I couldn't really fish that, so I fished this deeper bank and didn't do much there. He caught a good fish off of it right away, and then another fish, another fish. The next spot we pull up to is basically like a sandbar. and he said there had been a lot of activity there. It was first thing in the morning. He was throwing a big walking bait, and so I decided to tie on a little popper. And I think my second cast with that, I caught my first smallmouth, which is pretty cool. I was excited about that. So got my first fish there. Then we go off and fish grass, and he's got some specific areas that he's working. And the nice thing about fishing a big offshore grass flat, he may be keying in on some of the best stuff for him that I'm not able to cast to, but I have the ability to fish everything behind and off to the sides. And there was a lot of grass in the area, so I didn't feel like I was limited there at all. Wish I would have done better. I lost my first 3 fish. I broke one off, missed 2 on the hook set, lost another one after a few seconds. And y'all, I think to be real, the standing up on a bass boat and being that much higher off the water, the hook set kind of threw me off a little bit. It took me a couple just to kind of, it's hard to explain, but it's different. It's different enough to where I had to adjust to it. And after that, I caught a good fish in the grass. That was my second. I think I caught another one in that grass. And Joey had a little spot that he had got on a flurry and dropped, I think, 21 pounds on him, so including an 8-pounder. So I got to see him catch an 8-pounder. Man, was I freaking stoked for him. That was such a cool moment. Like he said, he was an incredible guy, very nice, really, really friendly, and super, super fun to fish with. So then we went and flipped docks. And this is where I kind of ran into my second challenge being a co. I learned that being on the back of the boat, close quarter casting, and having the motor and the power pulls and even the side of the boat, trying to skip and flip close quarter docks, that was kind of challenging for me. I felt like I was going to hit his boat or hit the power pulls. I'm used to having nothing up around me and I can do as I please. So I didn't feel like a lot of my cast reflected my ability, if that makes sense. It's definitely a big adjustment there, and I was a little flustered with that, but I did end up fishing the dock that he had fished, and I pulled my big fish right behind him, he thought that was pretty cool. I was like, yeah, man, thanks for leaving me one. So that was pretty cool. He was pretty excited about that for me, which was neat. Then we go fish a little more grass. I cull a fish. I think he culled a fish. And then we went back to that same sandbar, and he was throwing that big walking bait again. It was in the afternoon, cloud cover. I mean, perfect bait for that bar. Wasn't getting bit, so I tie on a mag draft. And my first cast of the mag draft, I catch like a 19-inch smallmouth that probably weighed 2 pounds. All spawned out. Didn't help me at all, but it was pretty awesome to get that fish on the mag draft out there. So that was a cool bite. That kind of concluded my day 1. So I had 9 pounds, 1 ounce, which had me in 12th place. It was really cool to bring the fish up and get to weigh them in. That was kind of a neat experience for me. I'd never done that. Even though I had a good bag, I wasn't super happy with how I fished. Like I said, just the adjustments I had to make. Personally, as an angler, I was a little flustered with myself. And that, I was kind of determined to do that a little bit better the next day. So my day 2 boater, I kind of feel out what we're going to be doing, and I ask him, I'm all excited, I'm asking him, we're going to fish grass, and he says no, and I'm like, okay, this is why I do this, because fishing things that aren't my strength is going to make me a better angler, and I'm going to learn a little bit more. Super helpful. So we're going to be doing drop shot, bluff walls, round docks, some finesse stuff. And then flipping some shallow cover and like shallow wood. So again, super fortunate to have the kind of the direction and the insight from both of these guys. So I was a little discouraged. I'm not gonna lie. I really wanted to be fishing the grass this time of year. I think that's where a lot of the big fish were in the grass. That's okay. I was ready to go in and do my very best with what we were fishing. I didn't bring any drop shot stuff with me. I don't do that. That's a big weakness of mine. So I was determined to kind of do things just a little bit differently and see how it went. One thing that I really liked about my day 2 guy, when we pulled up to an area, he told me how it's set up. He's okay, there's gonna be a point here. I'm gonna be fishing this part of it, but it comes out there and it's, 5-6 foot deep, and incredible that he gave me the respect and kind of told me so I wasn't just blind casting at things. Because you couldn't see it. You couldn't see it was an offshore point. I didn't know how it set up. I didn't know where it dropped. I could feel it with my weight, with what I was fishing, but it was really great of him to kind of give me that little bit of an insight prior to fishing it. So I decided to take a little round ball with a little baby swim bait and just kind of drag that along the bottom real slow. And I ended up catching a fish there pretty quick on that. And then we went to a marina and with a long rock jetty, and he was drop shotting around one set of floating docks. I ended up catching little 15-inch smallmouth fishing behind the boat with a fluke, skipping it kind of up along those rocks right there. Caught a smallmouth doing that. And then one cool thing, there's a bar kind of going across this section of water that prevents boats from getting there. And there's a big wide dock that comes like this huge dock. And then you can fish here. He said, I bet over here in this water there's some bedding fish or some big fish back there because nobody can fish it. And I was like, man, we gotta fish it. He's like, yeah, we do, because we'll never know. So I've got a rod with 20-pound fluoro and a little Texas rig goat on there. And he's like, we're never gonna get a fish over that dock, but we gotta try it. So my first cast, sure enough, I feel it, I set the hook, and just like the most efficient thing I've ever done, I cranked it, drug it up over that dock, and swung it into the boat. It wasn't a fish I could keep in my limit. It was a 1/4 inch shy, but it was awesome. My guy came back and gave me a little fist pump. We were pretty excited. Just having a good time. Not necessarily the way that I wanted to fish, but we had a great time. And I can't complain about that. I had a really good time with that. Then we go and fish a kind of a do-nothing bank, clay bank, and he's cranking and catching a couple small fish, and I decide, I've got 2 fish at this point. I really want to have a big bag, so I take that mag draft and start slinging it. And that's pretty much what I did religiously the rest of that day, and I ended up catching my big fish on that clay bank on that mag draft. So that was pretty cool. By big fish, not a giant fish, it was maybe a 3-pounder. It's maybe 2 3/4 pounder. But that was my 3 fish. Shortly after that, we looked back and realized that my side of the live well had stopped working and I had 2 fish floating. I didn't really know what that meant. I got kind of nervous. My boater was great. The water recycler stopped working on my side. So he immediately called the tournament director, and we were able to put my live fish in his live well. But I learned that I couldn't cull those dead fish, and the one happened to be my small fish, which was kind of tough, but again, my boater was on it, called the tournament director, got that kind of resolved, and it did mess with my head a little bit, but that's out of our control. And in fishing, there's 1,000 things like that happen. So I ended up weighing in. I had to take a weight penalty for the dead fish, but I think I weighed in 5'10", which gave me enough to get a 14th place check. So again, when you're a co-angler, I really believe that so much of what you do, sure, you've got to catch them and you've got to make the decisions that you're in control of in the back of the boat, but it really is very dependent on who you draw as a boater, and that I really saw that. But I can see if you were to get a draw where somebody back seats you the entire time, or doesn't really help you out, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad angler. It means that you just had a bad situation. So it kind of really sheds some perspective. Honestly, I feel way better about my 30th place in my kayak on Dardanelle than I felt about my 14th, because on Dardanelle, that was all me. My success, my failures, all of it was me. I wasn't expecting a cash check. I had zero expectations. I was very, very proud of how I fished on day 2. I think I made decisions that helped me catch those fish when otherwise I may not have. And I actually kind of started skipping and flipping different angles, and my casts were I was way more comfortable. So I felt like I fished 10 times better on day 2, but it wasn't reflected in my weight, and that's okay. It was still a really great experience, and some of the things that I took away from this, being a co-angler, well, let's talk about the bass side of it, the bass boat side of it. In a kayak, there were some of the areas that I would have definitely fished a little slower. Especially some of the offshore grass and some of that shallow wood. I would have slowed down and kind of maybe methodically picked it apart. We were fishing pretty fast, and I know that's a personal preference thing, but I think a lot of boaters kind of fall into that where they blow through areas pretty quick and they're looking for that just real aggressive fish. And sometimes that works out really well if you're that efficient. But that was interesting for me to see. The time management and running to spots. We fished from the south end of the lake all the way up to almost the dam, the tail race. So being able to cover that much water, I think for me personally, would be really tough. It would kind of mess with my head, and if I were on fish in one area and I knew they were there, but they weren't quite biting, instead of trying to figure out how to fire them up, having the ability to run, it's so tempting to do it. So it was really interesting to see that, you guys. I'm going to fish the next Central Open and kind of see how that one goes, and I will record that one. The reason I didn't for this one, honestly, I didn't want to. I wish I would have, because the footage would have been great. It was an awesome time, but for my first one, I really wanted to have zero distractions, and I wanted just to be in the moment and take away all I could in that experience. So the next one I will film for sure. I will film this tournament I've got coming up in Utah. This is going to be pretty awesome. I've got a surprise for y'all. So stay tuned for that, and I'll film on my kayak ones. But again, that's my experience. That's kind of the challenges I had, the struggles, the good, the bad, all of it, and my takeaways from it. So I'm curious to see, what do y'all think? I mean, there are people that make a career being a co-angler. I couldn't personally do that. I need to be able to find my own fish and to fish how I want, but it is a really valuable perspective, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to learn. So I'm curious to see what y'all think. Drop it in the comments, and let's have a good discussion about it. Hope you guys have a good week, and we will catch you at this tournament in Utah.